Have you ever noticed how certain smells can just like totally catapult you back to your childhood? Or you hear a song and suddenly it's prom night again.
It's crazy, right?
It really is like those emotionally charged memories. They just stick with us. So today we're diving into this study from the RIKEN Center for Brain Science, trying to figure out just how those memories get so powerful, especially during sleep. It was published in Neuron, so
Oh, yeah, I read that one. Really fascinating stuff. It seems like for a long time we've been sort of puzzled about why some memories are so vivid and others fade away. But this research, it's really shedding light on like what's actually happening in our brains.
let's break this down. Like, what do they actually do in this study?
Okay, so they used mice. They had them explore different textures like smooth versus grooved. Imagine, petting a fluffy kitten
Oh, okay.
versus like a prickly cactus.
Okay, yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
But how do you make a mouse, like, feel something about a texture?
Right, that's the clever part. So they paired the smooth texture with a positive experience for some of the mice. Let's just say a little meet cute with a female mouse.
Makes that smooth texture a little more memorable, huh?
I'd say so. And the results were pretty amazing. The mice who had that little romantic boost, they remembered that smooth texture way longer, like it meant something special. Even days later, they still preferred it. But the mice who just had the neutral experience, the memory just kind of faded.
Well, you're saying, like, a good feeling, a positive emotion, actually made the memory of the texture stronger? That's wild. So does it work with, like, I don't know, bad emotions too?
That's a great question. This particular study focused on the positive stuff,
Yeah.
but it's very likely that, yeah, negative emotions work the same way. Think about it. You probably remember the place where something scary happened really vividly, right?
Oh, absolutely. Those memories definitely don't go away.
Yeah.
So how does sleep fit into all of this? We know it's important for memory in general, but is there something specific about sleep and these like super strong emotional memories?
That's what makes this research so groundbreaking. Because they were using mice, they could really see what was going on in their brains during all of this. And the big player, the amygdala.
Okay, I've heard of the amygdala, but remind me, isn't it like the brain's alarm system?
Yeah, you got it. It's always on the lookout, scanning for threats and rewards, helps us react to anything important. And in this case, it's a big part of how emotionally charged memories get locked in during sleep. Like, it's telling the brain, hey, this smooth texture, it's good times, remember it.
Okay, but how does it do that? Does the amygdala just work alone?
Well, no, it's more like a team effort. The amygdala is part of a whole circuit. You've got the motor cortex, that's about movement, and then the sensory cortex, which processes everything we feel and see and hear. So it's like the sensory cortex feels the texture, the motor cortex helps interact with it, and then the amygdala is like, this is important.
Wow, so it's like emotions and movement and our senses all working together. It's kind of blowing my mind.
Mm.
But we still haven't talked about sleep.
Right, and this is where the research gets really interesting. We know sleep is key for making memories stick, but what they found here was pretty surprising. It's non-REM sleep that really matters for these emotion-linked memories, that deep sleep where you don't dream.
Not REM sleep. I always thought dreams were where memories got sorted out.
Yeah, a lot of people think that, but this study showed it's non-REM sleep that's doing the heavy lifting. They actually recorded brain activity, and they saw this whole circuit, the amygdala, sensory cortex, motor cortex, all firing up again during non-REM sleep. Like the brain is replaying the memory and making it stick.
So mice are asleep, but their brains are busy strengthening the memory of, like, a smooth date night texture.
Exactly. And to make sure this wasn't just a fluke, they did another experiment. They blocked signals from the amygdala. During non-REM sleep, the mice completely forgot about their special texture. But blocking it during REM sleep, no effect at all.
Wow, okay, so non-REM sleep, it's the real MVP here. So does this mean, like, the deeper I sleep, the more I'll remember things?
That's a good question. Researchers are still figuring that out. But this study definitely shows how important good sleep is, especially that deep non-REM sleep. If you want to remember those big emotional moments, you gotta get those Z's.
This is making me rethink my sleep schedule. But before we jump into what all this means for us humans, let's recap what we've learned from these little mice.
Yeah, good idea. So we've been talking about this awesome study where researchers actually connected emotion, specific parts of the brain, and sleep to how well we form memories, especially the really vivid ones tied to our feelings. So we've been exploring this study where researchers connected emotions, parts of the brain, and sleep to how memories are formed, especially memories tied to strong feeling.
Right, and it seems like what they found has implications beyond just how mice remember textures. We briefly touched on the potential benefits for humans, especially for conditions like addiction and PTSD. Do you think we could really use this research to help people with those problems?
It's definitely an area worth exploring. Think about addiction. One of the hallmarks is these really intense cravings that get triggered by certain cues. Like, imagine a smoker. They see an ashtray,
Oh, yeah.
and suddenly they have this overwhelming urge to light up a cigarette.
So those sensory experiences get linked with the feeling of getting nicotine, that reward.
Exactly. And this research suggests that those sensory cues, that emotional reward, are wired together in the brain, especially during non-REM sleep.
So every time that person sleeps, that association gets even stronger, which makes the cycle even harder to break.
That's the vicious cycle of addiction. But what if there was a way to disrupt that during non-REM sleep? Like, what if we could somehow weaken those connections? Imagine a therapy where during deep sleep, someone listens to certain sounds or smells,
Okay.
but we sort of dampen the activity of the amygdala at the same time.
So they're exposed to what triggers them, but without the emotional part. That's a really interesting idea.
It's still early days, but there are researchers exploring this. For example, some are using transcranial magnetic stimulation. It's called TMS.
TMS. What's that?
Oh, it's a non-invasive technique, no surgery. We use these magnetic pulses to stimulate or inhibit activity in specific parts of the brain. It's already being used for things like depression and migraines. And now researchers are looking at whether it can be used to adjust how memories are consolidated during sleep.
So we're not talking about erasing memories like in some sci-fi movie, right? It's more like we're adjusting how strong those connections are.
Exactly. Think of it like fine-tuning the volume knob on those emotionally charged memories. And the same idea could also apply to things like PTSD and trauma. Because with PTSD, certain sights, sounds, or smells, they can trigger intense flashbacks and distress. It's like the amygdala is stuck, constantly reliving the trauma.
I can see how being able to turn down that volume would offer hope for people with PTSD. Imagine finally being able to get a good night's sleep without those memories haunting you.
It's important to remember, though, we're still in the early stages of research. The brain is incredibly complex, and there's a lot that affects how memories are formed and stored. But this research does give us a new way to look at these challenges.
It sounds like we're on the verge of something big here. You mentioned earlier that this research might also relate to memory loss as people age. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, as we age, one of the things that happens is that our non-REM sleep, it becomes less deep and restorative.
So maybe that's why it's harder to remember things as we get older, because our brains aren't getting that same quality of deep sleep.
It's a definite possibility. And if that's the case, maybe we can find ways to improve the quality of non-REM sleep, like specific sleep therapies or even medications.
That makes me wonder, do you think things like diet or exercise could play a role?
That's a great point. It shows how much we still have to learn. There's more and more research showing that lifestyle impacts sleep quality and how well our brains work.
It sounds like there are so many possibilities for improving memory and brain health. What do you think are the next steps in this research?
Well, I'd say a few key areas. First, we need to keep refining our understanding of the neural mechanisms involved, like how exactly emotion links to memory consolidation. It's like building a more detailed map of the brain circuits involved.
So even more detail than what this study showed.
Exactly. The better we understand how the brain works, the better we'll be able to develop therapies and interventions.
And are there any new therapies in development now that seem promising?
Well, we talked about TMS, but researchers are also exploring other non-invasive brain stimulation techniques and also potential medications.
So medications that could, I don't know, boost non-REM sleep or adjust how active the amygdala is.
Right. And of course, we can't forget about lifestyle factors. Research on sleep hygiene, stress management, diet, all of that will continue to be crucial.
This has been an amazing conversation. It's really given me a much deeper understanding of how my own memories work. It seems like there are so many factors, and it's not just about trying to fix memories themselves, but about creating the right conditions for those memories to be processed and stored.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's a multi-pronged approach, because the brain is complex and our physical and mental health are interconnected. Our brains are just amazing.
So this whole conversation has got me thinking, if emotions are so important in how memories stick, why do we sometimes have these vivid memories of things that weren't that big of a deal? Like, I can remember what I had for breakfast a few days ago, and it wasn't exactly an emotional roller coaster.
That's a great observation, and it highlights that emotion isn't the only factor at work here. Our brains are very good at filtering and prioritizing information. Sometimes, even seemingly unimportant details stick with us if our brains decide they're relevant.
So it's not just about how strong the emotion is, but also the meaning we give to something. Our brains are always deciding what's worth keeping.
Exactly. There are probably multiple mechanisms at play when it comes to memory consolidation. Emotion is just one piece of the puzzle.
It's starting to hit me that there's way more to memory than I ever realized. It's so much more complex and fascinating than I originally thought.
It really is. And as we continue to learn about the brain, I'm sure we'll uncover even more incredible things.
Wow, so we've really gone deep today, talking about all these emotionally charged memories, how they form, and this idea that maybe we can even influence them while we're sleeping.
It's been a wild ride, hasn't it? We talked about the amygdala, non-REM sleep. It's fascinating stuff. But, it makes you think about the bigger picture too, right?
Yeah, what do you mean?
Well, we talk about new therapies, and that's great. But this research also raises questions about, who we are. How much do our memories actually make up our identity?
I've heard that saying, we are our memories, but now I'm thinking about it in a totally different way.
Right. If memories aren't these fixed things, if sleep and emotions can change them, then what does that say about us?
It's kind of a mind-blowing idea. Like, is anything really real, or is it all just what our brains decide it is?
It's a question people have been asking forever, and now neuroscience is giving us some clues. And as we start to develop technology that can maybe even change memories, these questions get even more important.
It's almost like we're entering this whole new world where the line between reality and what we think is real is getting blurry.
It's exciting, but also a little scary, right? We have to be really careful and think about the ethics of all of this as we learn more about the brain.
I agree. This whole conversation has really changed how I think about memory. It's amazing how much we're learning and how powerful our brains are in shaping who we are.
Absolutely. And I hope this inspires everyone to really pay attention to their own memories, the good ones, the tough ones, and to remember that it's okay to ask for help if you're struggling.
Yeah, totally. And hey, maybe most importantly, get a good night's sleep.
Can't argue with that. Sleep is so essential. It really does shape who we are.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive. Thanks so much for taking us on this journey into the world of emotionally charged memories.
It's been a pleasure. And to everyone listening, keep those brains curious, keep learning, and be open to new possibilities.
And until next time, sweet dreams and even sweeter memories.